75% of the benefits expenditure is reimbursed.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. So, and that's a key component to this budget.
I'm just looking at the salary.
You're looking only at salary line?
Yes.
Okay, that's why I'm asking the question.
I'm only looking at salary, not expense.
But I think, while I'm on that subject though, I think one of the key things to mention with this budget, again, is that the benefits, 75% of the benefit cost is reimbursed in the following year.
That's right, Mr. Chairman.
I just wanted everybody to be, some
Right.
people maybe weren't aware of that, and I think that's a
No, I'm only talking
critical
about
component.
salary, I'm not talking about the expense portion of the
Comments from the board. Mr. Younger, the consortium, the state laws have changed regarding whether or not you had to have a full-time agent, and I haven't kept pace with all of that. It's whether or not you can be part of a consortium and whether or not you can have a full-time agent has changed over the years. If you could give us a little background, and whether or not you can have a full-time or a part-time agent is also driven by state law.
I will say if Mr. Callahan retires, I won't say when, I'll say if he retires. The population status is 12,000 or over. Those who are 12,000 or over require a full-time veterans agent or else to be in a consortium approved by the Division of Veterans Affairs. We just cannot just normally just go in with Andover and say, let's go together. Veterans Affairs has to approve the consortium. And also the town has to be willing to join with us also.
Have we explored that? We haven't explored that.
As I've talked to Mr. Callahan, it is obviously preliminary discussions, depending upon what Mr. Callahan.
If he retired.
Right. But at this point, Reading and Wilmington are together, and they would have to accept us. They would have to accept us. Also, my discussions with Mr. Callahan in the past is I cannot just go into a consortium with Bedford. You have to be generally contiguous communities.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Response, Mr. Kelly.
In regards to the line item on training and education, although I appreciate what Mr. Vino said, the one thing I'd like to kind of hold back on is the fact that we've discussed consolidating or unifying the computer systems and so forth that we're using here in Town Hall. Hopefully, we're going to be retraining everybody to use the same systems. So I'm not sure that the benefit of those courses you're about to take, it might not be appropriate to what we're going to be, hopefully, when we unify the system at Town Hall. Do you see what I'm saying? The training you're getting now might be obsolete for what we're going to be using in the very near future.
Training I take is for purposes of compatibility with the computer system that the state uses. This is our problem. We don't have anything to do with the rest of the town as far as intercommunications. We communicate with the state through a program.
So you're looking for training on a state basis then, not for...
The state basis using conventional processes. But the point is, I need a little training in it.
Does the state offer training?
No, they don't offer any training.
They don't offer any training at all?
No, they expect you to...
That makes sense. No, I'm not talking about you, sir. I'm talking about in terms of they have a system they want you to use, but they don't offer any training as to how to use the system.
In fact, they don't even provide any money for the computerization. It's individual communities' responsibility. But they have the program, and we're supposed to be knowledgeable on it, and we use it. We do use it. Anybody who works with me is very proficient on the computer, but I'm not.
It's very awkward to interrupt her every half an hour or 3 times a morning and ask her, say, how do you do this?
Mr. Burke, I believe Mr. Younger has something to add.
Mr. Chairman, I'll reduce my administration budget by $200 to put toward Mr. Callahan.
That's the three, is that the whole
The whole
325?
325.
I'll round it to 300.
315.
How about we split the 175?
We'll take
I
300.
just got 300, you're talking 175.
Mr. Callahan, we'll take the 300.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, sir.
Back to the consortium concept though. Is that something that we need to explore now? Is that something we need to explore in the future?
I think it's something to explore in the future. I mean, Mr. Callahan does provide benefits by him being here the 22.5 hours. I mean, he's providing services today, he's providing services to former employees in his position. I mean, I think the consortium is an item to explore if and when Mr. Callahan indicates his wishes to retire. Prior to that,
If I may, the current schedule is really a part-time agent
that's correct.
in a community that requires a full-time agent.
We have grandfather.
But under the state law, we're grandfathered.
That's correct.
Okay. So, at a minimum, to go along with your comment, that if he ever expresses his intention to retire, we need to explore that option, because if he were to retire, we would be required by law to
My
fill with a
understanding,
full-time agent?
my understanding is you're required to have somebody at 35 hours a week, full-time, to provide
Which
veteran
is,
service.
35 is considered full-time, right? So at that, at a minimum, at that point, we'd want to get to the consortium to reduce that cost.
That would be my recommendation.
Other questions from the board? All set? Okay. So, Mr. Young, you're gonna move
300 from the administration side to the veteran side.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan.
Thank you.
Make one comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It was a pleasure working with the Selectman Vino. He's a real gentleman, and he's very empathetic.
Joe?
He articulates an empathy for veterans' issues, which I appreciate, and I'm sure the veteran community also appreciates. Thank you, sir.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion of Article 7, which is the acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 184, Section 51 of the Acts of 2002. At our last discussion on this particular issue, it was, did we want to, what options from this menu did we want to choose? Did we want to address the exemption amount? Did we want to address the eligibility age? Do we want to address gross receipt limits, whole estate limit, or whole estate exclusion? And if so, what combination of those items would be desirable? I know Mr. Simmons from the Assessor's Office provided us some additional detail to show us a projection of what those numbers might look like if we would change the eligibility age only, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that, Mr. Callahan, that was a point that you brought out last time, is shouldn't we just look at changing the eligibility age and increasing the universe of eligible applicants? And at that time, I said that, well, that may be a good idea. I need some more numbers. So I'll set that as the baseline. I don't know if anyone on the board has a thought or option in mind. Mr. Muldo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It particularly concerns me about this is an exemption amount, and if you look at the sheet, the revenue sheet, the abatements and exemptions, and I don't know exactly how their breakdown is, but it did go up about 34,000. So by changing this, we're increasing that amount, and it's a very scary thing to do in a budget like this. So I have two particular ways that I would prefer to go. One would be to allow the eligibility, gross receipts, the other things to change to the new amounts, but do not change the exempt amount. Therefore, we could kind of get an idea of how many people would be involved and what effect it has on our revenue stream. The other way to go would be to adopt all except the change in age. Leave it at 70. Or as far as the exempt amount, that could be, doesn't necessarily have to be 1,000, it could be 800, 750, whatever amount we choose, but leave the exempt eligibility age at 70 for now, and possibly look it down the road. Whatever that effect is to us, maybe changing it to 65 at a later date. So I kind of have two ways I would prefer to go, rather than all of this change right down the top to bottom.
Okay. If I may, Mr. Younger and Mr. Dow, the budget presumes some level of increase?
Yes.
And that, is that the whole $34,000 that Mr. Muldoon alluded to?
Yes,
So
that's just a number.
Right.
Part of it is based on, changes made under the statute and
So there's some increase built in there.
Yep.
If the change or the success of the program is greater than anyone anticipated, what are the options for funding?
if we exceeded the provision for abatements and exemptions in a given year, in theory, it's supposed to be raised on the next year's tax rate, but if there's some excess left in prior year's provisions, then you can cover it. I don't mean to double talk, but that's the mechanics.
We don't need to double talk. Yeah.
And the bottom line is, if there isn't sufficient money, you have to raise it the next year.
So it comes off the top.
Yep.
Instead of tax, like the snow and ice stuff.
Right.
And well, Bill, if I could, you didn't propose age as the only change.
I proposed, first one was no change in the exempt amount, which would stay at 500.
So you did.
Yes,
All right.
yeah, the age would change to 65. Then we would be able to see what the population is, but it would only, the effect would only be $500 in exemption versus $1,000.
And the effective date of this would be for which fiscal year? If this is adopted by town meeting in April,
My understanding it becomes effective for FY '04.
it is effective for FY. Why did I think it was FY05? I misunderstood. When is the first